and guard towers, designed to prevent East Germans from escaping to the west. The wall, Die Mauer in German, was the physical manifestation of a global geopolitical conflict, and it secured the divided city's status as the front line of the Cold War. But while the wall served as a symbolically charged backdrop for presidential visits and spy exchanges, it also became part of the urban fabric of the city, playing a role in the day-to-day lives of East and West Berliners alike. The fall of the Berlin Wall suddenly made the physical division between East and West a collector's item. People made a living from selling pieces of the Berlin Wall that were chipped off after November 1989. Nowadays, the scattered wall pieces suggest what the wall once was. They urge us to tear down walls in our own lives, literally and symbolically. And as what I'm showing you here on the screen are two installations we have done with these pieces of the walls that we have in our collection. The image on the right bottom is from an exhibition, Collected Fragments. The idea was to recreate sort of this archaeological feel of people chipping away at the wall. And the top left is then images from the current exhibition here at the Frank Art Gallery. As soon as the end of East Germany was proclaimed, people tried to get rid of their former lives. Flags, books, official documents, personal belongings, and other pieces ended up at the dump. Only later people started to realize that their commemorative and everyday materials took on a new value, be it as a historical source or as an emotional tie to a world no longer in existence. The 3 photographs by Margareta Hoppe, included in this exhibition, follows the traces of art from the former East Germany. Hoppe portrays in these images the empty spaces left behind on walls, in streets, and public buildings after removal of original socialist realist artwork. She also follows these works on their odyssey to archives and depots where they're being stored or simply left behind. In this painting, in this photograph called Fünf Kontinente, 5 Continents, which is the title of Werner Tüpke's painting in 5 parts, originally placed in the restaurant of the Astoria Hotel, the most popular place to stay in Leipzig during the time of East Germany's existence. It represented the working classes on the 5 continents. In 2006, when this picture was taken, the hotel was closed and the paintings were moved to the depot and Bad Frankenhausen. The dust frames on the wall you see in the photograph evoke the absence of the paintings. The bronze sculpture marks the relief group by Klaus Schau, Faber, Rolf Kurt, and Frank Rüdigkeit, also titled Aufbruch, which used to be placed in front of the Karl Marx University in Leipzig. It was removed to an allotment in 2006 and eventually stored away. Taken at a city depot in the city of Suhl, these munition boxes contain Willy Sitter's painting, Kampfsieg der Arbeiterklasse, Battle and Victory of the Working Class from 1977, that used to be displayed in the city's concourse center. The presence of the munition boxes point to the fact that Suhl was a center of weapons production. The Sitter painting remains in the boxes up to this day. The dismantling of East German culture occurred concurrently with the process of replacing the GDR with a unified capitalist Germany. The March 18th election in 1990 not only ended the East German experiment, it also posed the question, which political party can arrange the best terms for unification? Citizen movements were obliged to behave like political parties and enter the first free election. Parties with West German affiliation found this an easy task, as their West German partners promised rewards of Western affiliation. The very political pluralism of this March election is evident in how even little-known East German parties, such as the Democratic Peasants' Party of Germany, and new configurations such as the PDS, Party of Democratic Socialism, took part in this election. So what you have here on the screen are samples of those posters. On the left is the Democratic Peasants' Party of Germany, and on the right, the PDS. In the middle is the Socialist Democratic Party's poster, and you have then the figure of Willy Brandt, he was quoted over and over again for his saying, "Jetzt wächst zusammen, was zusammengehört." Now grows together what has belonged together. Prominent cultural figures such as Bertolt Brecht and Leonid Bundy once were honored, naming streets after them. After 1989, streets were renamed, their names referred to individuals associated with communist rule. Objects once enjoyed or taken for granted can all of a sudden become superfluous or even hateful to a fundamental change of context. This is what happened with objects from the former GDR after the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989. For East Germans, living in a unified Germany meant a new life orientation, where common values and themes lost their original meanings. The experience of a meaningful life in East German terms changed overnight. The rules of the game had to be reinvented. History left its fragments, and memory complemented this sense of change through the widespread need to rethink the fundamentals of life. Thank you very much for your attention.
As I said earlier, we would be living in a radically different world had the Cold War ended differently. It would be a world without freedom of speech, travel, and religious practice. That world resembled the East Germany where Matthias Pankau grew up as a member of a discriminated minority, Christians. Mr. Pankau is from Leipzig. In 1989, Leipzig became known as the City of Heroes, Heldenstadt, because it was the hub of the protest movement that ended tyranny. What is less well known is how and when this movement started. It began in Leipzig in 1968, after the Communist Party boss, Walter Ulbricht, had ordered the demolition of that city's 700-year-old university church. A gracile, beautiful building was blown up. Ulbricht felt that there was no place for a house of God on a socialist parade ground. 3 weeks after this barbaric act, a banner of protest appeared at an international music competition in Leipzig. This was the beginning. Over the following 21 years, it snowballed into the mass movement whose success we are celebrating today. Please welcome Matthias Pankau, our import from Leipzig. Matthias.
Good morning. I stand before you as a happy man. I would not be a journalist today had Germany not been peacefully reunified 20 years ago, and my brother Andreas would not be a dentist. You see, we were Christian kids in a communist land, and because we were Christians, our teachers harassed us publicly in a manner unimaginable in this country. They came uninvited into our apartment on some evenings and threatened us, "Don't expect to have a future in this country if you cling to your backwards beliefs." They said that we would never become more than butchers or watch repairmen if we didn't join the communist youth organizations. And we knew exactly what this meant. It meant that we would suffer the same fate like our mother and our two aunts, who were barred from higher education because they were fervent Lutherans. There were 800 students at our school, and of these only my brother and I were not members of the Pioneers and the Free German Youth, the equivalent to the Hitler Youth. At roll call at the beginning of each school year, we were ordered to stand in front of the assembled student body to be ridiculed for our faith. These are the two who still believe in God, a woman teacher sneered, and the other teachers and most of the students laughed. We were also excluded from many class excursions. But here's the historical irony. We grew up in the heartland of the Lutheran Reformation, but as practicing Lutherans, we were made pariahs at its very cradle. How did we get there? Well, my 89-year-old grandfather is a pastor. He was the only one in his family who survived World War II. His parents were killed in an air raid, and his brother died at the Eastern Front. So when he came back to his destroyed hometown of Leipzig, he studied theology and became a pastor. He and my grandmother raised their 3 children as Christians, and they in turn brought up their kids, us, in the faith as well. And so, all of us were part of a small minority in this once solidly Lutheran part of Germany. As children, we were taught scripture and sang hymns by Martin Luther and Paul Gerhardt. We learned to love Johann Sebastian Bach's cantatas and passions. And often the members of our family were the only worshippers in my grandfather's Sunday services. We kids rang the bells, read the Bible lessons, or sat with my grandma as she played the organ. And our teachers, of course, knew that, and some of them really enjoyed it, ridiculing us for it in front of others on Monday when we came to school. There was this history teacher. When she discussed the Reformation, she ordered me to stand up and said, maybe Matthias will be able to tell us what's so special about Martin Luther, as he is still a member of the church. Or when our biology teacher talked about the origin of species, he pointed at me and said to the others, you won't believe it, but there are still some students in here who believe that God created the world, right, Matthias? Actually, my brother and I couldn't care less about this kind of harassment, except from the prospect of not being allowed to attend university after leaving high school. All this changed dramatically in 1989. In September and October, all kinds of people poured out of the main downtown churches to demonstrate peacefully for freedom. And suddenly the storm and despised churches provided a safe haven for the whole opposition, Christians and non-Christians alike. The clergy played a pivotal part by cautioning everybody to exercise non-violence diligently. First, there were thousands, then tens of thousands, finally 70,000. Carrying candles, they marched Leipzig's central quadrant, which measures exactly 1 square kilometer. I joined them a couple of times in the company of my parents and grandparents, and I must tell you, it was the